a 39% tariff. Swiss president and business minister are already in the U.S. for last-minute negotiations. To secure a better deal, Switzerland is considering buying U.S. liquefied natural gas. The U.S. is a leading buyer for Swiss watches, machinery, and chocolate. If the two nations fail to reach an agreement, those products will be subject to the 39% rate starting tomorrow. Negotiations follow a deal struck with the European Union last month. In exchange for a reduced 15% tariff rate, the EU has agreed to buy $750 million of liquefied natural gas, oil, and nuclear energy products over the next 3 years. And the EU has suspended a package of retaliatory tariffs on U.S. products following the deal signed with President Trump last week. While some EU leaders continue to criticize the agreement, others insist it reflects a strategic realism to preserve the U.S. military alliance. NTD's international correspondent David Vivez reports from Paris.
The European Commission said it will suspend trade countermeasures worth more than $100 billion on Tuesday, delaying their August 7th start as talks continue on finalizing the deal made by EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and President Trump on July 27th. The deal imposes a 15% tariff on most European products imported into the United States, plus the purchase from EU of $750 billion of U.S. liquefied natural gas, oil, and nuclear fuel. The agreement continues to face criticism across Europe. French President Emmanuel Macron said it reflects the weakness of the continent, while German Finance Minister Lars Klingbeil argued that the EU remains too weak on trade policy. Brussels says the decision was driven by what it calls strategic realism. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's negotiating leverage was limited due to Europe's dependency on U.S. defense and energy following post-Cold War military cuts and the bloc's shift away from Russian gas. Former President of the European Economic and Social Committee, Henri Mallos, says while 15% is high, it can still work for French export sectors.
If we think about cosmetics brands or French champagne and wine, they have such an aura among the American public that sales may not fall. Some European producers could even offset the tariff's effect by adjusting prices. So yes, the deal is tough, but not prohibitive.
EU officials also said the deal is the real prize to maintain Trump's commitment to NATO and continued armed deliveries to Ukraine. EU Chief Trade said the deal is not only about trade, it's about security, Ukraine, and preventing further geopolitical instability. Malous says the investment from EU will lead to a reinforcement of the EU-US relationship and hopes for more return.
It's true there's been more U.S. investment in Europe than the reverse. Maybe the EU should have pushed harder for balance, but that may come later. I support building a new alliance, like a modern Schuman plan, tied to peace in Ukraine, Russia, Europe, and the U.S. Hopefully that will lead to lower tariffs and more cross-investment. Because we have to remember the real challenge is defending ourselves against the Chinese communist regime and the threat it poses, both commercially and politically.
David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
U.S. health officials are warning travelers about a mosquito-borne illness affecting parts of Asia and other continents. The chikungunya virus